The courtroom air was stale, smelling of cheap coffee and despair. Officer Vance Whitaker sat in the witness stand, a smirk plastered on his face, confident that the two black men in orange jumpsuits were about to lose their freedom for assaulting a police officer. He had the badge, he had the gun, he had the system, but he didn't check their IDs closely enough. He didn't know that the men he arrested were elite Tier 1 operators. And he certainly didn't know that the man about to push open the double doors wasn't just a lawyer. He was a rear admiral in the United States Navy, and he was bringing the full weight of the U.S. government down on Whitaker's head. This is the story of a corrupt cop who picked a fight with the wrong warriors, and the karma that hit him harder than a Hellfire missile. The heat radiating off the asphalt in Virginia Beach was enough to distort the air, making the horizon shimmer in a haze of humidity and exhaust. Officer Vance Whitaker sat in his cruiser, the air conditioning blasting against his face. He was a veteran of the force, a man whose career had plateaued years ago. He was known in the precinct, though not for his bravery or his detective skills. He was known for his numbers. Whitaker brought in arrests. He wrote tickets. He kept the riffraff out of the affluent neighborhoods of North End. He was a hammer, and to him, the world was full of nails. He took a sip of his lukewarm soda and adjusted his radar gun. That's when he saw it. A matte black Ford F-150 Raptor, lifted with tinted windows and pristine rims, rolled through the intersection. It wasn't speeding. It wasn't swerving. It was driving exactly the speed limit. To Whitaker, that was suspicious. Nobody drives exactly the speed limit unless they are hiding something. He pulled out into traffic, his lights off, tailing the truck. He ran the plates. No warrants. Registered to a Kairo Jefferson. The name didn't ring a bell, but the truck looked too expensive for the demographic Whitaker had already constructed in his head. Dispatch, this is Unit 4 Alpha. I'm initiating a stop on a black Ford Raptor northbound on Atlantic. Suspicion of erratic driving. Whitaker lied smoothly into the radio. He flipped the lights. Inside the Raptor, Chief Petty Officer Kairo Jefferson sighed, his knuckles tightening slightly on the steering wheel. Sitting next to him was Petty Officer First Class Darius Washington. They were both in civilian clothes, jeans, fitted t-shirts, baseball caps. They had just returned from a deployment that didn't exist on paper. They were tired. They were sore. They just wanted to get to Zay's house and sleep for days. "Here we go," Zay muttered, checking his mirrors. "You good, Dre?" Darius, who was nursing a fractured rib from a botched extraction in a place they couldn't name, shifted painfully in the passenger seat. "I'm good, Chief. Just keep your hands visible. I don't have the energy for drama today." Zay pulled over, cut the engine, and rolled down all four windows. It was a textbook maneuver to show they weren't a threat. They placed their hands on the dashboard and steering wheel. Whitaker approached slowly, his hand resting on the grip of his Glock 19. He saw two large black men. He saw the size of their arms, the thick necks, the calm demeanor. He didn't see discipline, he saw defiance. "License and registration," Whitaker barked, not bothering with a greeting. "Good afternoon, officer," Zay said, his voice level and controlled. "My license is in my wallet, back right pocket. Registration is in the glove box. My passenger will reach for it if you allow." "I didn't ask for a life story," Whitaker snapped. "Driver, get out of the car." Zay paused. "Officer, for a traffic stop, I am safer inside the vehicle. I haven't committed a crime." "I said, get out of the car," Whitaker shouted, unholstering his taser and pointing it through the window. "Failure to comply. Get out now." Darius looked at Zay. They had faced insurgents, terrorists, and warlords. They had stared down death in dark alleys in Somalia and mountains in Afghanistan. This shaking, sweating cop with a power complex was dangerous, but not in the way he thought he was. "Doing it now," Zay said. He slowly unbuckled and stepped out, raising his hands. Whitaker slammed Zay against the side of the truck. "Spread 'em." "Officer, I have a fractured rib. Please be careful with the passenger," Zay warned calmly. "Shut up!" Whitaker kicked Zay's ankles apart. He patted him down aggressively, finding nothing but a wallet and a folded pocket knife. Legal in Virginia. Then, Whitaker saw the military ID in the wallet. He paused for a split second. Navy. But Whitaker's ego was already in overdrive. He couldn't back down now. He had already escalated. In his mind, these weren't officers or gentlemen. They were affirmative action hires who thought they owned the road. "Military, huh?" Whitaker sneered, tossing the wallet onto the hood of the hot truck. "Cooks? Janitors? What ship you sweeping floors on?" Zay didn't answer. He stared straight ahead. "I asked you a question, boy." Whitaker shoved Zay. That was the mistake. Zay's training kicked in. His body went rigid, not to attack, but to restrain the lethal force he was capable of unleashing. "I am a Chief Petty Officer in the United States Navy. I advise you to check your tone and your procedure, officer." Whitaker turned red. He felt small. He hated feeling small. He holstered the taser and grabbed his handcuffs. "You're under arrest." "For what?" Darius called out from the truck. "Disorderly conduct, resisting arrest, and assaulting a police officer," Whitaker improvised, snapping the cuffs on Zay's wrists so tight the metal bit into the bone. "I haven't touched you," Zay said, wincing. "You threatened me," Whitaker lied. He marched Zay to the cruiser and shoved him into the back. Then he turned to Darius. "Your turn, big man. Get out." Darius stepped out slowly. "Officer, you are making a mistake of career-ending proportions." Whitaker laughed. It was a hollow, ugly sound. "I am the law out here. Get in the car." As Whitaker drove them away, leaving the expensive truck on the side of the road to be impounded by his buddy's towing company, he looked in the rearview mirror. "You two are going to rot in county until the judge sees you," Whitaker gloated. "Hope you like bologna sandwiches." Zay looked at Darius. They didn't speak. They didn't need to. They communicated in silent nods. Wait for the opening. The precinct smelled of bleach and unwashed bodies. Whitaker marched Zay and Darius through the booking area, parading them like trophies. "Got two big ones today, Sarge?" Whitaker called out to the desk sergeant, a tired-looking man named Blaine. Blaine looked up over his spectacles. He saw the two men. He saw the way they walked, heads up, scanning the room, analyzing exits and threats. He saw the lack of fear in their eyes. Blaine had been in the Marines back in the day. His gut twisted. "What's the charge, Vance?" Blaine asked, his voice cautious. "Assault on an officer, resisting, disorderly. And I'm tacking on a failure to identify for the passenger," Whitaker said, tossing the paperwork on the high desk. "I gave you my ID," Darius said calmly. "Quiet." Whitaker slammed his hand on the counter. Blaine looked at the IDs: Kairo Jefferson, Darius Washington. He ran the names through the local database. Nothing. Clean records. "Whitaker," Blaine said quietly, "did you check their military status?" "Yeah, Navy. Probably supply guys. They got mouths on them, Sarge. Real disrespectful." Blaine looked at Zay. "Rank?" "Chief Petty Officer E7, Zay said. "Naval Special Warfare Group 2. The room went silent. The typing in the background stopped. Naval Special Warfare. SEALs. Blaine's face drained of color. He looked at Whitaker, who was busy filling out an evidence bag, oblivious. "Whitaker," Blaine hissed, "come here." Whitaker walked over, annoyed. "What?" "Do you know what Group 2 is?" Blaine whispered harshly. "I don't care if they're Group 10. They assaulted me." "They are SEALs, you idiot," Blaine said. "Tier 1 operators. If you cooked this charge up, you better uncook it right now." Whitaker scoffed, his arrogance blinding him. "SEALs? Look at them. They don't look like the guys in the movies. They're lying. Stolen valor? Probably. Just book 'em, Blaine. I'm going to write the report so tight they won't be able to breathe. Whitaker walked back to the men. He leaned in close to Zay's face. Sarge thinks you're special, Whitaker whispered. But in here, you're just another inmate. I'm going to make sure you lose that rank. I'm going to make sure you get a dishonorable discharge. You'll be lucky to get a job as a security guard at the mall when I'm done with you. Zay looked Whitaker in the eye. I want my phone call. Phone's broken, Whitaker smirked. That is a violation of my rights, Darius stated. Sue me, Whitaker laughed. Take him to the holding cell, general population. General population was a zoo. Drunks, brawlers, and petty thieves. When Zay and Darius walked in, the noise level dropped. The inmates sensed the predator energy. These weren't victims. They found a corner and sat on the concrete bench. He's blocking the call, Darius said quietly. He can't block it forever, Zay replied. We have a briefing soon. If we aren't there, the alarm bells go off. The days passed. The food was inedible. The smell was atrocious. Whitaker came by twice to taunt them, tapping on the glass. Still tough, guys? He mouthed. During the next shift change, a young rookie officer named Lena Voss was doing rounds. She saw the two men sitting in the corner, distinct from the chaos around them. They were doing push-ups, perfectly synchronized, hundreds in a row. She checked the log. Assault on officer. She looked at the men again. They didn't look like the type to assault a cop and lose. If they had assaulted Whitaker, Whitaker would be in the ICU. She walked over to the bars. Hey, she said softly. Zay stood up and approached. Good morning, officer. You guys are Navy? She asked. My brother is in the Navy, stationed in Norfolk. We are, Zay said. Officer, we have been denied legal counsel and our phone call for days. Officer Whitaker has violated procedure. If we do not contact our command by this evening, this station is going to have a very serious problem on its hands. Not from us, but from the people looking for us. Officer Voss bit her lip. She knew Whitaker was dirty. Everyone knew, but the blue wall of silence was thick. I can't let you out, she whispered. I don't need out, Zay said, his voice intense but kind. I need you to make a call for me, just one call. It will save your career when the dust settles. She looked left and right. What's the number? Zay recited a number from memory. It wasn't a local lawyer. It wasn't a bail bondsman. Tell the person who answers. Viking is in the cage. Code Black, Virginia Beach, 4th Precinct. That's it. Voss nodded and walked away quickly. She went to the break room, her hands shaking. She dialed the number. It rang once. Tactical Operations Center. Identify. A voice answered. It sounded like gravel crunching under boots. This is a friend. I have a message. Viking is in the cage. Code Black, Virginia Beach, 4th Precinct. There was a pause on the other end. A pause that felt heavy. Confirm location. 4th Precinct. Yes. Who is the arresting officer? Officer Whitaker. Understood. Clear the line. The line went dead. Voss stared at the phone. She had no idea what she had just done, but she felt a shiver run down her spine. Back in the cell, Zay sat back down. Did you do it? Darius asked. She did, Zay said, a small smile touching his lips. Who did you have her call? Darius asked. The old man, Zay said. Darius's eyes widened. You called the Admiral personally. He told us to call him if we ever got in a situation we couldn't shoot our way out of. Zay shrugged. I'd say this qualifies. Darius laughed, a deep rumble in his chest. Whitaker is a dead man walking. Later that afternoon, Officer Vance Whitaker was feeling good. He had spent the time finalizing his report. He had been creative. He wrote about how Zay had lunged at him, how Darius had reached for the waistband. He sprinkled in buzzwords like furtive movements and verbal aggression. He knew the district attorney, a man named Preston Lang, would eat it up. Lang was running for re-election, and needed to look tough on crime. Whitaker walked into the station whistling. He sat at his desk and logged into the digital evidence server. He needed to upload his body cam footage. He plugged in the camera. The software loaded. He watched the video. It didn't match his report. Not even close. On the video, Zay was polite. Darius was calm. Whitaker was the one screaming, cursing, and escalating. The video clearly showed him kicking Zay's legs and shoving him when he was already compliant. Whitaker chewed his lip. This was a problem. He looked around. The squad room was busy. No one was watching. He opened the editing software. He couldn't delete the whole thing. That would look suspicious, but he could corrupt the file. A little glitch here. A missing audio segment there. Just enough to make the defense's case ambiguous. He worked on it for a while. Sweating, he managed to delete the audio of him using the racial slur he had muttered under his breath when putting Zay in the car. He corrupted the video file right at the moment he shoved Zay, making the screen pixelate into gray noise. "Perfect," he whispered. "Equipment malfunction." He submitted the file. Suddenly, the station doors opened. A man in a sharp suit walked in. He wasn't military. He looked like a lawyer, but the kind who cost a fortune. "I'm here for Kairo Jefferson and Darius Washington," the man said to the desk sergeant. His voice carried across the room. Whitaker stood up. "I'm the arresting officer. Who are you?" "My name is Clayton Sterling," the lawyer said. "I'm their counsel." "They're being arraigned in the morning," Whitaker said, stepping forward, trying to use his physical size to intimidate the lawyer. "You can see them then." Sterling looked at Whitaker with a mixture of pity and amusement. "Officer Whitaker, is it? I've already filed an emergency motion. I'm seeing them now, and I suggest you don't stand in my way. You have already accumulated enough liability for one lifetime." Whitaker blinked. "Liability? I caught 2 thugs assaulting a cop." Sterling smiled. It was a shark's smile. "Is that what happened? We'll see." Whitaker watched as Blaine led the lawyer back to the cells. He felt a knot of anxiety in his stomach. Who were these guys? He went to the captain's office. Captain Harlan was a political climber who hated waves. "Cap, we got a situation," Whitaker said. "Those 2 guys I brought in, they got a high-powered lawyer." The captain didn't look up from his paperwork. "So, convict them and move on. Your report solid?" "Solid as a rock," Whitaker lied. "Good. Don't worry about the lawyer. D.A. Lang will handle it. We need the stats." Whitaker left the office, reassuring himself. It was fine. It was just a lawyer. He had the badge. The judge, Victoria Hale, was known for siding with the police most of the time. She hated disrespectful defendants. Whitaker went home, drank a few beers, and went to sleep. He didn't know that miles away at the Naval Air Station Oceana, a Gulfstream jet with United States Navy markings had just touched down. He didn't know that the man stepping off that plane was Rear Admiral Grant Sterling, commander of Naval Special Warfare Command. And he certainly didn't know that Clayton Sterling, the lawyer, was the admiral's brother. The trap was set. The morning of the arraignment arrived with a heavy, suffocating grayness. The Virginia Beach courthouse was a brutalist structure of concrete and glass, designed to make everyone who entered feel small. Inside courtroom 3B, the air was cold. Judge Victoria Hale sat on the bench, shuffling papers with impatient, jerky movements. She was a woman in her 60s with a reputation for maxing out sentences. She believed in law and order above all else, and to her, a police badge was a shield of infallibility. Kairo Jefferson and Darius Washington sat at the defense table. They were still in their orange jumpsuits. Whitaker had ensured they didn't get their civilian clothes back in time for the hearing. It was a psychological tactic. Make them look like criminals, and the judge will treat them like criminals. But it wasn't working. Even in orange polyester, Zay and Darius sat with spines of steel. They didn't slouch. They didn't fidget. They looked like statues carved from obsidian. Officer Vance Whitaker sat in the front row, bouncing his leg. He had his dress uniform on, his badge polished to a mirror shine. District Attorney Preston Lang stood up. He was a balding man with a cheap suit and a loud voice. "Your Honor," Lang began, "the state is ready to proceed. This is a clear case of two individuals who thought they were above the law. They were driving erratically, endangering the public, and when a heroic officer intervened, they became violent. We will prove that the defendants assaulted Officer Whitaker and resisted lawful arrest." Judge Hale peered over her glasses at Zay and Darius. "Assaulting an officer in my courtroom, that's a fast track to the state penitentiary. Proceed." Whitaker took the stand. He placed his hand on the Bible and swore to tell the truth. He didn't even blink. "Officer Whitaker," Lang asked, strutting back and forth, "tell us what happened on that day." Whitaker leaned into the microphone. "I observed the suspect vehicle weaving in and out of traffic. When I initiated the stop, the driver, Mr. Jefferson, was immediately hostile. He refused to exit the vehicle. When he finally did, he lunged at me. I had to use physical force to restrain him for my own safety. The passenger, Mr. Washington, then exited the vehicle and reached for his waistband. I feared he had a weapon." "And did you capture this on your body camera?" Lang asked, knowing the answer. Whitaker put on a sad, frustrated face. "I tried to, sir, but during the struggle, my camera was damaged. The video file was corrupted. Technical services tried to recover it, but—" "Convenient," Clayton Sterling said from the defense table. He didn't look up from his notepad. "Objection!" Lang shouted. "Sustained," Judge Hale snapped. "Watch yourself, counselor." Lang smirked. No further questions. Clayton Sterling stood up. He buttoned his suit jacket. He walked slowly toward the witness stand. He didn't look aggressive. He looked bored. "Officer Whitaker," Sterling said softly, "you said my client lunged at you. Can you define lunge?" He moved his body forward aggressively," Whitaker stammered. "Interesting, because the medical report from the jail intake shows Mr. Jefferson has zero bruising on his knuckles or hands, but he has significant bruising on his ankles. How does one get bruises on the inside of their ankles if they are the one attacking?" Whitaker froze. I had to sweep his legs to control him." "Ah, so you kicked him." "I performed a tactical takedown," Whitaker said, his voice rising. "And Mr. Washington," Sterling continued, flipping a page, "you said he reached for his waistband. Did you find a weapon?" "No, but he could have had one." "So you arrested a man for reaching?" "He failed to identify," Whitaker shouted. "He refused to give me his ID." Sterling stopped. He looked Whitaker dead in the eye. "Are you sure about that, officer? You're under oath. Did Darius Washington refuse to give you his ID?" Whitaker hesitated. He remembered tossing the wallet on the hood. He remembered seeing the military card, but he had already committed to the lie. "Yes," Whitaker said. He refused. Sterling smiled. It was a terrifyingly genuine smile. "No further questions for this witness at this time, Your Honor, but I reserve the right to recall him." Judge Hale looked at the clock. "Mr. Sterling, do you have any witnesses, or can we wrap this up? I have a lunch appointment." "I do have a witness, Your Honor," Sterling said. "Actually, I have two, but the first one is running a few minutes late. He had to park a rather large vehicle." "I don't have time for games, counselor," Hale scoffed. "Call your witness, or I'm issuing a verdict." "He is entering the building now," Sterling said, checking his watch. "And trust me, Your Honor, you will want to hear what he has to say. It concerns the corruption of the video evidence. You have 1 minute," Hale warned. The courtroom doors remained closed. Silence stretched out, heavy and awkward. Whitaker smirked at the DA. The lawyer was bluffing. There was no witness. Then, the floor vibrated. It was a subtle, rhythmic thud, like the approach of a storm. The double doors at the back of the courtroom didn't just open. They were pushed wide by two shore patrol officers in pristine dress whites. And then he walked in. The atmosphere in the room shifted instantly. It wasn't just a man walking in. It was an event. He was a mountain of a man, 6'4", wearing the full-service dress blue uniform of a United States Navy Rear Admiral upper half. The gold stripes on his sleeves shone under the courtroom lights. His chest was a colorful wall of ribbons: Silver Star, Bronze Star with Valor, Purple Heart, Legion of Merit. Rear Admiral Grant Sterling walked down the center aisle with a stride that commanded absolute silence. His face was weathered, carved from granite, with eyes that had seen things that would make Officer Whitaker cry for his mother. He carried a leather briefcase in one hand and his cover hat tucked under his left arm. Officer Whitaker's mouth fell open. He slumped in the witness chair. He recognized the rank. He recognized the power. Judge Hale sat up straight, instinctively adjusting her robe. She had never had a flag officer in her courtroom. Admiral Sterling stopped at the bar, the wooden railing separating the gallery from the court. He looked at Zay and Darius. He gave them a sharp, singular nod. Zay and Darius, despite the shackles, snapped to attention in their seats. "Who is this?" Judge Hale asked, her voice losing its edge. Clayton Sterling stepped forward. "Your Honor, the defense calls Rear Admiral Grant Sterling, commander of Naval Special Warfare Command." The admiral opened the gate and stepped through. He didn't take the witness stand immediately. He stood in the center of the well, looking at Whitaker. "Your Honor," the admiral said. His voice was deep, resonant, and filled the room without shouting. "I am here on behalf of the Department of the Navy to correct a grave error in your docket." "Admiral," Hale stammered, "this is highly irregular. This is a local municipal matter." It ceased to be a local matter when Officer Whitaker arrested 2 active-duty Tier 1 operators on classified orders, falsified a police report, and detained them in violation of the Service Members Civil Relief Act. The admiral stated calmly. Whitaker turned pale green. "Tier 1. Classified orders." "Objection!" D.A. Lang squeaked, standing up. "This is hearsay. The admiral wasn't there." Admiral Sterling turned his head slowly to look at the DA. The look was so withering that Lang actually sat back down. "I wasn't there," the admiral conceded. "But the United States Navy is always watching its assets." The admiral placed the briefcase on the defense table. He clicked it open. "Officer Whitaker testified that his body camera malfunctioned," the admiral said, pulling out a tablet. "And he testified that the defendants were driving erratically. He also testified that Petty Officer Washington failed to identify himself." The admiral walked to the judge's bench and handed her a flash drive. "Your Honor," the admiral continued, "Chief Jefferson drives a 2024 Ford Raptor. That vehicle is equipped with a 360-degree surveillance system that records directly to a secure cloud server. Officer Whitaker impounded the truck, but he couldn't impound the cloud." Whitaker felt the room spinning. He gripped the arms of the chair. "We have the full video," the admiral said. "Front, back, and interior cabin audio. Would you like to see it?" "Play it," Judge Hale whispered. Clayton Sterling connected the drive to the courtroom projector. The video sprang to life on the big screen. The courtroom watched in silence. They saw the truck, driving perfectly straight at the speed limit. They heard Zay and Darius talking about their deployment, about how tired they were. Then they saw the lights. "Here we go," Zay's voice on the video said. "You good, Dre?" They saw the stop. They saw Whitaker approach with his gun already in hand. They heard the audio clearly. "Cooks, janitors, what ship you sweeping floors on?" A gasp went through the courtroom. They saw Whitaker shouting. They saw Zay calmly step out. They saw Whitaker kick Zay's ankles apart aggressively. "Whitaker, I'm going to make sure you lose that rank. You'll be lucky to get a job as a security guard." And then the smoking gun. On the video, Darius clearly held up his military ID. "Officer, you are making a mistake of career-ending proportions." The video ended. The courtroom was dead silent. You could hear the hum of the air conditioner. Admiral Sterling turned to Whitaker. The admiral didn't look angry. He looked disappointed, which was somehow worse. Officer Whitaker, the admiral said, these men had just returned from a counterterrorism operation that saved the lives of 3 American aid workers. They hadn't slept in hours. And yet they treated you with more respect in minutes than you have shown the badge in your entire career. Judge Hale turned to Whitaker. Her face was no longer friendly. It was furious. She felt played. She hated being played. Officer Whitaker, Hale hissed, you are still under oath. Do you want to amend your testimony regarding the malfunctioning camera and the failure to identify? Whitaker opened his mouth, but no sound came out. He looked at the DA, who was busy stuffing papers into his briefcase, trying to distance himself from the blast radius. I, Whitaker stuttered. Your Honor, Admiral Sterling interrupted. There is one more thing. He pulled a document from his briefcase. Because these men were detained illegally, they missed a mandatory debriefing regarding national security. That makes Officer Whitaker's interference a federal issue. I have spoken with the FBI this morning. Agents are waiting in the hallway. Whitaker's eyes bulged. FBI. They aren't here for my sailors, the admiral said, finally cracking a dry, cold smile. They are here for the man who violated their civil rights under color of law. Whitaker stood up, panic overtaking him. I was just doing my job. They looked suspicious. Sit down, Judge Hale shouted, slamming her gavel so hard it sounded like a gunshot. Bailiff, take Officer Whitaker into custody immediately for perjury and contempt of court. The bailiff, a burly man who had watched the video with disgust, moved fast. He grabbed Whitaker's arm and twisted it behind his back, the exact same way Whitaker had done to Zay. Ow! Watch the arm! Whitaker cried. Stop resisting, the bailiff deadpanned. As Whitaker was dragged out of the courtroom, kicking and screaming, he locked eyes with Zay. Zay didn't smile. He just nodded slowly. Admiral Sterling walked over to the defense table. Zay and Darius stood up. At ease, gentlemen, the admiral said softly. Thank you, sir, Zay said. Don't thank me, Chief, the admiral replied. You showed restraint. If you had engaged him, we'd be having a very different conversation. You did good. Judge Hale cleared her throat. She looked shaken. All charges against Mr. Jefferson and Mr. Washington are dismissed with prejudice, she announced. And gentlemen, on behalf of this court, I apologize. You are free to go. Zay and Darius walked out of the gate. The admiral and his brother, the lawyer, flanked them. But the nightmare for Whitaker wasn't over. It was just beginning. The transition from police officer to inmate is not gradual. It is violent, sudden, and absolute. Officer Vance Whitaker didn't go home to his comfortable suburban house that night. He didn't sit in his recliner with a cold beer. Instead, he was processed into the system he had spent years feeding. He was stripped of his uniform, the polyester armor that had given him his power. He was stripped of his badge, his gun, and his dignity. In their place, he was given the same rough orange jumpsuit he had forced Zay and Darius to wear just days before. Because he was a cop, and a newly infamous one at that, the warden couldn't place him in the general population. In Gen Pop, Whitaker wouldn't have lasted the night. The prison code is brutal to law enforcement, especially dirty ones. So for his own safety, Whitaker was placed in administrative segregation, ADSEG, the hole. It was a small box of cinder blocks, painted appealing institutional cream. There was a steel toilet, a thin mattress that smelled of mildew, and a slit of a window too high to see out of. For hours a day, Whitaker sat in silence. But it wasn't a peaceful silence. It was a heavy, suffocating silence that amplified the loop playing in his head. The look on the admiral's face, the pixelated video on the projector, the sound of the gavel slamming down. But while Whitaker sat in the dark, the world outside was burning his life to the ground with the brightness of 1,000 suns. The courtroom footage didn't stay sealed. It couldn't. The story was too big. the characters too perfect. A court clerk, perhaps disgusted by Whitaker's lies, or perhaps just sensing the moment, leaked the video file. It hit the internet like a meteor. Within hours, the Admiral and the corrupt cop was the #1 trending topic on every major platform: YouTube, Twitter, TikTok, Reddit. There was no escaping it. Millions of people watched Whitaker smirk on the stand. They watched him lie. They watched the Admiral dismantle him with the cold precision of a surgeon. The internet did what the internet does best. It weaponized the truth. An army of amateur sleuths, fueled by outrage, began to dig. They didn't just look at the arrest of the SEALs. They looked at everything. They found Whitaker's old Facebook posts, filled with veiled racism and aggression. They found reviews of him on local community watch pages, stories from nurses, teachers, and delivery drivers who had been harassed by Officer 4 Alpha. The blue wall of silence, the unspoken code that protects cops from consequences, didn't just crack, it evaporated. The Virginia Beach Police Department realized immediately that Whitaker was not a soldier to be protected. He was a cancer to be cut out. The chief of police, a man who usually avoided the press, held an emergency conference on the steps of the precinct the next morning. He looked tired, his face pale under the barrage of camera flashes. "Vance Whitaker does not represent the values of this department," the chief declared, his voice tight. "Effective immediately, his employment is terminated. We are scrubbing his pension. Furthermore, I have ordered a full internal audit of every arrest, every citation, and every interaction Whitaker has logged in the last years. If there are other victims, we will find them." Whitaker heard about it from a guard who slid a tray of unidentifiable slop through the slot in his door. "Hey, ex-officer," the guard sneered. "Saw your boss on TV. You're fired, and I wouldn't count on that pension." That was the first domino. The second domino fell closer to home. Whitaker's wife, Brooke, was a quiet woman. She had spent years walking on eggshells around Vance. She knew his temper. She knew how he liked to control the finances, the schedule, the very air in the house. She had told herself it was just stress from the job. Then she saw the video. She watched it on her phone in the kitchen while their 2 children slept. She saw the way Vance taunted Zay and Darius. She saw the cruelty in his eyes. A specific predatory gleam she recognized from the times he had screamed at her for burning the roast or coming home minutes late. She realized, with a terrifying clarity, that the man she lived with was a monster. And now the whole world knew it. She didn't wait for him to make bail. She didn't wait for an explanation. Brooke packed 3 suitcases in a frenzy. She took the kids, the dog, and the sparse savings they had in the jar above the fridge. When Whitaker finally used his one allotted phone call from the jail, dialing his home number with shaking fingers, he didn't get an answer. He got a disconnect tone. Days later, he was served with divorce papers in his cell. Brooke had filed for an emergency restraining order, citing the video as evidence of his unstable and violent nature. She was gone. Whitaker had lost his career. He had lost his family. But the avalanche wasn't done. The final crushing blow came from the federal government. The FBI investigation that Admiral Sterling had triggered wasn't a bluff. The Bureau didn't care about traffic tickets. They cared about federal crimes. And when they looked into Whitaker's finances, they found the rot. It wasn't a grand conspiracy. It was pathetic, small-time corruption. Whitaker had been falsifying overtime hours for years, stealing thousands of dollars from the city. He had been pocketing cash from evidence in minor drug busts, 20 here, 50 there. It was the behavior of a man who thought no one was watching. But the FBI sees everything. Federal charges were added to the state charges: wire fraud, embezzlement, and deprivation of rights under color of law. Months later, the final act played out. Whitaker stood in a federal courtroom. He looked like a ghost of his former self. He had lost weight. His hair was thinning and unkempt. The arrogance that had defined him was replaced by a trembling, pathetic fear. His lawyer, a public defender who clearly wanted to be anywhere else, offered no defense. The evidence was insurmountable. The federal judge looked down at Whitaker with disdain. "Mr. Whitaker, you were entrusted with the power to protect. You used it to bully, to steal, and to destroy. You picked a fight with men of honor because you have none yourself." The gavel came down. "I sentence you to years in federal prison. No possibility of parole." As the marshals moved to shackle him, Whitaker turned desperately to the gallery. He scanned the benches, his eyes wet with tears, looking for anyone, a partner, a friend, his wife, anyone who would look at him with sympathy. The benches were empty. The brothers in blue had abandoned him. His family had erased him, except for one man. Sitting in the back row, silent and unmoving, was Kairo Jefferson. Zay was wearing a sharp, tailored suit. He wasn't there to laugh. He wasn't there to shout. He was there to witness. He sat with the calm, terrifying stillness of a predator who has already won. Whitaker locked eyes with him. For a moment, he wanted to scream, to beg, to blame Zay for ruining his life, but the words died in his throat. He saw the look in Zay's eyes. It wasn't hate. It was indifference. Today, Whitaker was no longer a threat. He was just a memory. Whitaker was dragged out the side door, the chains rattling around his waist. Zay watched him disappear, then stood up, buttoned his jacket, and walked out into the bright, blinding sunlight of a free man. Years had passed since the gavel fell, but the Virginia Beach heat remained a constant, shimmering force. It baked the cracked asphalt of the old industrial district, a world away from the manicured lawns of the North End or the sterile air-conditioned hallways of the courthouse. This wasn't the side of town tourists saw. It was a neighborhood of boarded-up windows, faded dreams, and young men who learned too early that the world expected the worst of them. But on the corner of 4th and Main, a new heartbeat was thumping. Kairo Jefferson stood in the center of a cavernous renovated warehouse. The smell of fresh paint mixed with the scent of sweat and leather. A smell Zay associated with work, with progress. Above the double doors, a hand-painted sign read, "Viking Defense and Leadership Academy." It wasn't a security firm. It wasn't a private military contractor. It was something far more important. After the trial, Zay and Darius had made a choice. They had finished their service with the Navy, taking their retirements and walking away from the life of silence and shadows. They realized that their specific set of skills, discipline, emotional control, and the ability to remain calm in the face of chaos were wasted if they only used them to hunt enemies overseas. They needed to build something here. They used every cent of the multi-million-dollar settlement from the city, the blood money from Whitaker's corruption, to buy this building. They gutted it, cleaned it, and turned it into a sanctuary. Zay watched from the sidelines as Darius Washington moved across the blue mats. Darius wasn't wearing body armor or carrying a rifle anymore. He was wearing a t-shirt that said, "Focus over fear." And he was holding strike pads for a scrawny 15-year-old kid named Marcus. Marcus was fast, but he was angry. You could see it in the way he threw his punches, wild, looping, desperate. He was fighting ghosts. "Stop," Darius said, his voice a low rumble that cut through the noise of the gym. Marcus froze, chest heaving. "I'm hitting hard, coach. I'm hitting hard." "You're hitting out of anger," Darius corrected him gently, lowering the pads. "You're fighting like you hate the target. What did we talk about, Marcus? When you fight with hate, you get sloppy. You get tunnel vision. That's how you get caught." Darius tapped the side of his own head. "The fight isn't out here. It's in here. You control the emotion. Don't let the emotion control you. That's what weak men do. Do you want to be a weak man with a strong punch, or do you want to be a warrior?" Marcus wiped sweat from his eyes, his shoulders dropping. "A warrior, coach." "Good. Again. Breathe first, strike second." Zay smiled. It was the same lesson they had learned in BUD/S. The same lesson that had saved them when Officer Whitaker tried to bait them into a street brawl. They were teaching these kids how to be dangerous so that they never had to be violent. The front door chimed, drawing Zay's attention. Silhouetted against the bright afternoon sun stood a man who looked out of place in this grit, yet entirely at home in command. He was older now, the lines on his face etched deeper by decades of service, but the posture was unmistakable. Rear Admiral Grant Sterling, retired, stepped inside. He wasn't in his dress whites today. He wore a simple navy polo and carried car keys, looking like a grandfather on a golf trip, but the eyes were still sharp, scanning the room, assessing threats, analyzing exits. It was a habit that never truly left you. Zay jogged over, wiping his hands on a towel. "Admiral, I didn't know you were in town." "I have some business at the base," the Admiral said, his voice warm. He reached out and shook Zay's hand. The grip was iron, just as Zay remembered. "But I couldn't drive past without seeing what you two have built. The photos don't do it justice, Zay." "It's getting there, sir," Zay said, gesturing to the expanse of the gym. "We've got dozens of kids enrolled this semester, most of them on full scholarship thanks to the settlement trust. We're teaching martial arts, sure, but also financial literacy, conflict resolution, coding. We're giving them the tools to navigate a system that's often rigged against them." The Admiral nodded slowly, watching Darius correct Marcus's stance with infinite patience. "You turned a battlefield into a garden, son. That's not an easy thing to do." "We had help," Zay said humbly. "We had people who stood up for us when they didn't have to." The Admiral reached into a canvas bag he was carrying. "I brought something for the office, a housewarming gift. A little late?" He handed Zay a heavy rectangular object wrapped in brown paper. Zay tore it open. It was a framed photograph, professionally matted. It captured the three of them, Zay, Darius, and the Admiral, standing on the courthouse steps years ago. The sun was hitting them, and for the first time in the photo, Zay noticed that he and Darius were smiling. Not a smile of arrogance, but of relief. At the bottom, a brass plaque was engraved with a quote, "The only thing necessary for the triumph of evil is for good men to do nothing." Zay felt a lump in his throat. He ran his thumb over the frame. "Thank you, sir. This means a lot." "I thought about Whitaker today," the Admiral said suddenly, his tone dropping an octave. Zay looked up. The name no longer carried the sting it once did. It was just a word now, a relic of a past life. "Yeah. He's up for a parole hearing soon," the Admiral said, looking toward the mats. "I was asked to submit a character statement. I spoke to the warden. Apparently, Whitaker hasn't changed. He spends his days in the library writing appeals, blaming the system, blaming politics, blaming you too. He still believes he's the victim." The Admiral shook his head, a look of genuine pity crossing his face. "He's rotting, Zay. Not just in a cell, but inside his own head." Zay looked back at Darius, who was now laughing at something Marcus had said, clapping the boy on the shoulder. The sound of joy echoed off the high ceilings. "He's in his own prison, Admiral," Zay said softly. "Even if they let him out, he'll never really be free. He has to live with the man in the mirror. He has to wake up every day knowing he sold his soul for a power trip and lost everything. That's a life sentence I wouldn't wish on anyone." "And you?" the Admiral asked. "Do you still think about it?" "Only when I look at these kids," Zay replied. "I think about how easily one bad cop could have ended their futures, and I make sure they know how to survive it. We didn't just win a court case, Admiral. We won our lives back, and we're using them." The Admiral smiled, a rare, genuine expression that crinkled the corners of his eyes. "Carry on, Chief. Carry on." "Hey!" Darius's voice boomed across the gym, breaking the serenity of the moment. Zay turned to see Darius grinning, pointing at Marcus. The kid looked hopeful, almost bouncing on the balls of his feet. Marcus just asked if graduating the leadership course means he gets to drive the Raptor, Darius shouted. Zay laughed, a deep, full sound that chased away the last lingering shadows of the past. He looked at the Admiral, then back at the kid. Tell him if he gets straight A's and perfect attendance, we can talk about him washing it, Zay yelled back. The gym erupted in laughter. The Admiral chuckled, patting Zay on the back. Outside, the world was still complicated, still unfair, and still dangerous. But inside these walls, two warriors had planted a flag. They had turned their trauma into armor for the next generation. Karma had done its job by taking Whitaker down. But Zay and Darius had done something better. They had risen up. And that is the story of how one corrupt officer tried to break two Navy SEALs and ended up breaking himself against the wall of justice. It's a reminder that true strength isn't about a badge or a gun. It's about character, discipline, and having the brothers who will stand by you when the fire gets hot. If you enjoyed this story of instant karma and justice served, please smash that like button. It really helps the channel grow. Subscribe and hit the bell notification so you never miss a story. And let me know in the comments, do you think Whitaker's sentence was long enough, or did he get off easy? I read every comment. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.